The aliens laughed at the warning. Now humans hunt them without mercy. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a massive bowl, with thousands of seats arranged in perfect circles. Representatives from over 200 different alien species filled the chamber, their various forms creating a strange rainbow of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some had tentacles instead of arms, others had multiple eyes or no eyes at all. The air hummed with the sound of translation devices working overtime to convert hundreds of different languages into something everyone could understand. At the center of the hall stood a simple podium. Today, for the first time in galactic history, a human would speak to the council. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked slowly toward the podium. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5 feet tall with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations or fancy designs. Compared to the elaborate robes and exotic appearances of the alien delegates, she looked almost boring. The Zephyrians were the first to notice her. They sat in the upper section of the hall, their tall insect-like bodies covered in shimmering purple scales. Their leader, High Speaker Zektar, leaned forward with interest. To him, the human looked like a small hairless animal trying to pretend it belonged among giants. "Look at this tiny creature," Zektar whispered to his aide, his voice making a sound like grinding metal. "Do they really think they can stand among us as equals?" The Vorthak Empire representatives sat nearby. They were large, bear-like creatures with thick gray fur and small intelligent eyes. General Morthak, their chief delegate, growled softly as he watched the human approach the podium. "She moves like prey," he rumbled. Careful but always ready to run. In the highest section sat the Cathara, the most technologically advanced species in known space. They looked almost like humans, but their skin was pale blue and their heads were larger to hold their massive brains. Professor Velhan observed the human with scientific curiosity. "Interesting," she said to her colleague. "They achieved faster-than-light travel much sooner than our models predicted. Perhaps there is more to study here than we thought." Sarah Chen reached the podium and looked up at the thousands of alien faces staring down at her. She had practiced this speech for months, knowing that these words might determine humanity's future among the stars. She pressed a button on the podium, and her voice was instantly translated into every language in the chamber. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice calm and steady. "My name is Sarah Chen, and I have the privilege of representing humanity in this historic moment. We come before you today not as conquerors or beggars, but as neighbors who wish to join the galactic community." A few polite clicks and chirps echoed through the chamber. Most of the aliens seemed bored already. Sarah continued, "Earth is our home, but we do not wish to remain isolated. We have much to offer the galaxy, and much to learn from all of you. We bring with us knowledge of genetics, chemistry, and engineering that might prove useful to many species here today." High Speaker Zektar made a sound that was the Zephyrian equivalent of a chuckle. "How adorable," he said, loud enough for nearby delegates to hear. "The little mammals think they have something to teach us." Sarah heard the comment through her translation device, but her expression did not change. She had expected this reaction. She took a deep breath and delivered the part of her speech that her government had debated for weeks. "We hope for friendship and cooperation with all species represented here today. However, we feel it is important to be completely honest about humanity's nature." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Humans are peaceful by choice, not by nature. We have a saying on Earth, 'Don't mistake our kindness for weakness.' We hope for friendship, but we are prepared for war." The chamber erupted in noise. Zektar stood up, his long arms waving in the air as he made the chittering sound that Zephyrians used for laughter. Other delegates joined in, some laughing, others making dismissive gestures with tentacles, claws, or appendages that humans had no names for. General Morthak leaned back in his chair, his massive belly shaking as he laughed. "Did the little furless creature just threaten us?" he asked his aide. "That's like a mouse warning a lion to be careful." Even Professor Velhan, usually serious and scientific, allowed herself a small smile. "Fascinating," she said. "They actually believe they could pose a threat to species that have been traveling the stars for thousands of years." Sarah Chen stood quietly at the podium, waiting for the laughter to die down. She had expected this reaction too. When the chamber finally grew quiet again, she spoke once more. "We understand that humanity is new to galactic politics. We understand that many of you have technologies and capabilities far beyond ours. But we also understand that every species in this chamber was once new to space travel. We hope that our honesty will be seen as a sign of respect, not foolishness." The laughter had stopped, but the dismissive attitude remained. High Speaker Zektar stood up to address the chamber officially. "The Zephyrian Empire welcomes these humans to the galaxy," he said, his metallic voice dripping with condescension. "We are always happy to guide primitive species toward civilization. However, we must discuss the proper place for humanity in the galactic order." He gestured toward a large display screen that showed the current galactic map. Different colors marked the territories of various species and alliances. As newcomers, humans would naturally begin as a client species, Zektar continued. "The Zephyrian Empire would be honored to oversee humanity's development. We would provide protection and guidance in exchange for raw materials and labor. It is a generous offer for such a young species." Sarah Chen felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. "We appreciate the offer, High Speaker Zektar, but humanity seeks a different arrangement. We wish to be recognized as an independent species with full rights and representation in the Council." The laughter started again, even louder this time. General Morthak stood up, his massive form casting a shadow over nearby delegates. "Independence?" he roared. "You have been in space for what, 50 of your years? The Vorthak Empire has been conquering worlds since before your species learned to make fire. You will take what position you are offered and be grateful for it." Professor Velhan activated her own speaking device. "Perhaps we should be more scientific about this," she said in her cool, analytical voice. "The humans' technology is impressive for their age, but they lack the basic understanding of galactic warfare, politics, and economics. Independence would be unwise." Sarah Chen looked around the chamber, seeing the same expression on thousands of alien faces. They saw humans as children playing at being adults. They saw Earth as a new toy to be divided among the established powers. "I understand the Council's position," she said finally, "but I must respectfully decline your offer. Humanity chooses to remain independent. We hope that in time you will see us as partners rather than subjects." The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then High Speaker Zektar made a gesture that was universally understood as dismissal. "So be it," he said, "but understand this, little human. The galaxy is not a safe place for those who refuse the protection of stronger species. Perhaps experience will teach you what words cannot." As Sarah Chen walked away from the podium, she heard the aliens already discussing how to divide human space among themselves. They spoke as if she could not hear them, as if humans were not even worth considering as a threat. She reached the exit of the Great Hall and turned back for one last look at the Galactic Council. They were already moving on to other business, dismissing humanity, as if they were nothing more than an annoying interruption. Sarah Chen smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. They had no idea what they had just done. Within 6 months they would begin to learn. The aliens laughed at the warning. Now humans hunt them without mercy. 6 months after the Galactic Council meeting, High Speaker Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominant Glory. Through the massive viewing screen, he could see 3 human mining colonies scattered across the asteroid belt of the Ross 128 system. The colonies looked small and fragile, like metal insects clinging to space rocks. "How pathetic," Zektar said to his fleet commander. "These humans actually think they can refuse our generous offer and face no consequences." Commander Yexnal, a smaller Zephyrian with bright red markings on his scales, checked his tactical display. "Our intelligence reports show minimal defenses, High Speaker. A few patrol ships, some mining equipment that could be converted to weapons, and approximately 50,000 civilians across all 3 colonies." Zektar nodded with satisfaction. The combined fleet under his command included ships from 3 different species, 30 Zephyrian warships, 15 Vorthak heavy cruisers, and 5 Cathara science vessels loaded with advanced weapons. Against this force, the humans had perhaps a dozen small patrol ships. "This will be over quickly," Zektar declared. "A few surgical strikes and these stubborn mammals will understand their place in the galaxy." The Vorthak General Morthak appeared on the communication screen, his large form filling the display. "My ships are ready, Zektar, but I still think we should simply crush these insects completely. Why waste time with surgical strikes?" "Because," Zektar explained patiently, "we want the humans to surrender and become useful. Dead slaves produce nothing. A quick lesson in superior firepower should convince them to accept our protection." Professor Velhan's image joined the conversation from her science vessel. I agree with the surgical approach, she said. However, I recommend caution. Human technology has some interesting aspects that we do not fully understand yet. Zektar made the chittering sound of Zephyrian laughter. Caution? Against a species that barely learned to travel between stars? Professor, your scientific mind sometimes sees complexity where none exists. The first attack began at 800 hours, standard galactic time. Zektar's fleet approached the largest colony, Horizon Station, with their weapons powered but not firing. They expected the humans to immediately surrender when they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Instead, the human patrol ships moved to intercept the alien fleet. Impossible, Commander Yexnal muttered as he watched his tactical display. They're actually going to fight. The human ships were tiny compared to the alien vessels. The largest human patrol ship was smaller than a Zephyrian escort fighter. But as the battle began, something strange happened. The human ships moved in ways that the aliens had never seen before. Instead of the formal battle lines that civilized species used, the humans scattered like insects, attacking from multiple directions at once. They used the asteroids as cover, appearing and disappearing so quickly that the alien targeting systems could barely keep track of them. What kind of cowards fight like this? General Morthak roared as his ship struggled to hit the darting human vessels. Stand and fight like warriors. But the humans had no intention of fighting like the aliens expected. When a human ship took damage, it didn't retreat to a safe distance for repairs like civilized species did. Instead, it rammed itself into the nearest alien vessel, causing damage far beyond what its size should have allowed. The first Zephyrian ship to be destroyed was the escort cruiser Swift Victory. A human patrol ship, already damaged and leaking atmosphere, crashed into the cruiser's engine section at full speed. The explosion took out both ships and damaged two nearby Zephyrian vessels. They're killing themselves, Yexnal reported in shock. The humans are actually ramming our ships. Zektar watched in growing anger as more human ships sacrificed themselves to damage his fleet. This was not how civilized warfare was supposed to work. There were rules, traditions, codes of honor that all species followed. But the humans seemed to ignore every rule of proper combat. The aliens eventually overwhelmed the human patrol ships through sheer numbers, but the cost was higher than anyone had expected. 5 alien ships were destroyed and 8 more were badly damaged. In return, they had killed perhaps 300 human defenders. Begin the assault on the colonies, Zektar ordered. The attack on Horizon Station revealed more surprises. When the alien troops landed, they found that the humans had turned their entire colony into a fortress. Mining equipment had been converted into weapons. Civilian areas were filled with traps and ambush points. Even the children seemed to know how to fight. Captain Drexhan led the first assault team into the colony's main habitat area. His troops were experienced warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds for the Zephyrian Empire. They expected to face frightened civilians who would surrender quickly. Instead, they walked into a carefully planned killing zone. The humans had evacuated most of their non-combatants through hidden tunnels, leaving behind only those willing to fight. Every corridor became a battleground. Every room contained hidden defenders. These aren't soldiers, Drexhan reported to his commander. They're miners, engineers, shopkeepers, but they fight like they've been warriors their whole lives. The worst part was the humans' complete lack of fear. When cornered, they didn't surrender. They set off explosives that killed themselves along with their attackers. When captured, they refused to give information about their colony's defenses or evacuation routes. Sir, one of Drexhan's soldiers reported, we've found something strange in the habitat's computer systems. What kind of strange? They've wiped everything, sir, but they left behind a single message file. Drexhan opened the file. It contained a simple text message in perfect Zephyrian. You wanted to teach us a lesson. Thank you for the education. We are quick learners. The message was signed by someone called Admiral Marcus Rivera, Earth Defense Force. It took 6 hours to fully capture Horizon Station. The aliens had expected to take it in 30 minutes. By the time they controlled the colony, they had lost nearly 2,000 troops. The humans had fought to the last defender. And when the battle was over, the aliens found that the colony's infrastructure was so damaged it would take months to repair. The attacks on the other 2 colonies went similarly. The humans refused to surrender, turned every building into a fortress, and fought with a ferocity that shocked the alien commanders. When the aliens finally won, they controlled 3 broken colonies filled with booby traps and useless equipment. General Morthak's voice crackled over the communication system as the alien fleet regrouped. What kind of species does this? We offered them honorable surrender, and they chose to die instead. Professor Velhan had been studying the human tactics during the battle. I believe we may have misunderstood something fundamental about human psychology, she said quietly. Their behavior suggests that they view this not as a lesson in submission, but as a learning experience. Zektar refused to believe that the operation had been anything less than a complete success. We control their colonies. We have demonstrated our superior strength. The lesson has been taught. But even as he spoke, reports were coming in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing in strange places, observing alien fleet movements and disappearing before they could be caught. Human diplomatic messages were being sent to minor species, offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Most disturbing of all was the message that arrived on Zektar's personal communication channel 2 days after the battle. It was from Admiral Marcus Rivera, the human who had signed the message at Horizon Station. The message was simple. Thank you for the demonstration. We found your tactics very educational. However, we believe there are more efficient methods of warfare than what you have shown us. We look forward to sharing our ideas with you soon. Class is now in session. Zektar stared at the message for a long time. Something about the human's tone bothered him. There was no anger, no threats, no demands for revenge. Just a calm, almost scientific interest in improving upon what they had learned. For the first time since the operation began, High Speaker Zektar felt a small chill of uncertainty. The humans had lost the battle completely, but they acted like they had won something more valuable than victory. They acted like they had learned exactly what they needed to know. The aliens laughed at the warning. Now humans hunt them without mercy. Admiral Marcus Rivera stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Force headquarters, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. Around him, dozens of officers worked at holographic displays showing the positions of every known alien ship within 50 light-years of Earth. The room hummed with quiet efficiency, but there was an energy in the air that hadn't been there 6 months ago. The humans were no longer just defending. They were hunting. Admiral, called Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park from her station. We have confirmation that the Zephyrian convoy has entered the Proxima system. 23 ships, mostly cargo vessels with escort fighters. Rivera nodded without looking away from the main display. And our assets? The Shadow Wolfpack is in position. Commander Jackson reports all systems green and stealth fields at maximum efficiency. Rivera smiled. The aliens still had no idea how far human technology had advanced in just 6 months. While they had been celebrating their easy victory over 3 mining colonies, human engineers had been working around the clock to revolutionize everything about human space warfare. The secret was simple. Humans had never tried to match alien technology. Instead, they had focused on being completely different. Where aliens built massive ships with heavy armor and powerful energy shields, humans built small, fast vessels that were nearly invisible to most sensor systems. Where aliens favored energy weapons that could be seen and tracked, humans preferred kinetic weapons that struck without warning. Where aliens followed ancient codes of honor and traditional battle tactics, humans studied every form of warfare their species had ever developed and chose the most effective methods. Sir, reported Commander Chen from the intelligence station, we're receiving the final data burst from our reconnaissance mission to the Zephyrian home system. Rivera walked over to Chen's station. For the past month, human stealth ships had been conducting deep reconnaissance missions into alien territory. The aliens knew that humans were scouting their systems, but they couldn't detect the human ships well enough to stop them. What did we learn? Rivera asked. Chen brought up a detailed star map on her display. The Zephyrians have 47 major military installations spread across 12 systems. Their fleet movements follow predictable patterns based on ancient trade routes. Most importantly, their communication systems use quantum entanglement networks that we can now intercept and decode. Rivera studied the data with satisfaction. The aliens had made a critical mistake when they attacked human colonies. They had shown humans exactly how their technology worked, how their tactics functioned, and how their command structure operated. Now humans were using that knowledge to devastating effect. Excellent work, Rivera said. Send the data to all fleet commanders. It's time to begin the next phase. 3 hours later, Commander Lisa Jackson floated in the cramped bridge of the stealth destroyer Shadow Wolf. Her ship was one of 12 human vessels hiding in the asteroid field near Proxima Centauri, waiting for the Zephyrian convoy to enter their trap. The Shadow Wolf was unlike anything the aliens expected. Only 60 meters long and built with experimental metamaterials that bent sensor waves around its hull. The ship was effectively invisible to most alien detection systems. Its weapons were equally unusual. Instead of energy cannons, it carried magnetic railguns that could fire metal projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. "Contact," whispered Ensign Rodriguez from the sensor station. 23 Zephyrian ships entering the system. Formation matches intelligence projections. Jackson studied her tactical display. The alien convoy was arranged in a standard defensive formation that would have been effective against other alien fleets. Against human stealth ships, it was almost useless. "All ships, this is Wolf Leader," Jackson said quietly into her communication system. "Begin hunt protocol. Remember, we want to disable their command ship and destroy their escorts. No survivors among the military vessels." The Zephyrian convoy commander, Captain Vextar, sat comfortably on his bridge as his ships moved through the Proxima system. His cargo vessels carried supplies for the occupation forces at the human colonies, and his escort fighters were more than enough to handle any human patrol ships that might interfere. "Captain," his sensor officer reported, "I'm detecting some unusual readings from the asteroid field. Probably just solar radiation interference." Vextar barely paid attention. Human technology was so primitive that their ships couldn't hide from basic Zephyrian sensors. If there were any human vessels in the system, he would have detected them hours ago. The first railgun shot came from directly above the convoy, fired by the Shadow Wolf from a range of 2,000 kilometers. The tungsten projectile, moving at 12% of light speed, punched completely through a Zephyrian escort fighter before anyone knew the battle had started. "Contact," the sensor officer screamed. "We're under attack." But by the time the words left his mouth, 11 more human ships had opened fire. Railgun projectiles struck the alien vessels like invisible hammers, tearing through their energy shields as if they didn't exist. The aliens' defensive technology was designed to stop energy weapons, not solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. "Where are they?" Vextar shouted as his ships tried to return fire. "I can't see anything." The human ships were already moving, their stealth systems making them nearly impossible to track. They fired from one position, then immediately relocated before the aliens could respond. It was like fighting ghosts. Captain Jackson watched with cold satisfaction as her tactical display showed the destruction of the alien escort vessels. In less than 5 minutes, her small fleet had destroyed 18 enemy ships while taking no damage themselves. "Wolf Leader to all ships," she transmitted. "Begin capture protocol on the remaining cargo vessels. Remember, we want prisoners and intelligence data." The surviving Zephyrian cargo ships found themselves surrounded by enemies they couldn't see. When they tried to surrender, the human ships became visible for the first time, appearing around them like ghosts materializing out of thin air. Captain Vextar stared in shock at the human vessels on his screen. They were so small that his escort fighters could have carried them as cargo. How had such tiny ships destroyed his entire military escort? A human voice came over his communication system, speaking perfect Zephyrian. "Zephyrian vessels, this is Commander Jackson of the Earth Defense Force. You will shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resist or destroy your cargo will result in your immediate destruction." Vextar looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. "Do as they say," he ordered quietly. The boarding process was unlike anything the Zephyrians had experienced. The humans who came aboard wore advanced armor that made them look like mechanical demons. They moved with military precision, securing the ship and gathering intelligence data with ruthless efficiency. But what disturbed Vextar most was their attitude. The humans weren't angry or vengeful. They were simply professional, treating the capture of his convoy like a routine training exercise. They asked specific questions about Zephyrian fleet movements, supply lines, and command structures. When his crew refused to answer, the humans didn't torture them. They simply moved on to the next question, as if they already knew the answers and were just confirming details. "You cannot win," Vextar told the human commander when she came to question him personally. "We have thousands of ships, dozens of worlds. You are one small planet with a handful of primitive vessels. Commander Jackson studied him through her helmet's visor. Captain, you destroyed 3 of our mining colonies. You killed 50,000 of our civilians. You laughed when we warned you not to mistake our kindness for weakness. She paused, letting her words sink in. We are no longer kind. Vextar felt a chill run through his body. What do you want? We want you to deliver a message to your superiors, Jackson replied. Tell them that the hunting season has begun. Tell them that every Zephyrian military vessel outside of your home system is now considered a target. Tell them that we will show them exactly how primitive species conduct warfare. She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, and Captain? Thank your High Speaker Zektar for the excellent training exercise. We learned everything we needed to know about your tactics, your technology, and your weaknesses. Now we're going to put that education to good use. As the human ships disappeared back into the asteroid field, leaving the cargo vessels drifting helplessly in space, Captain Vextar realized that something fundamental had changed. The humans weren't trying to defend themselves anymore. They were hunting. And from the cold efficiency he had seen in their operations, Vextar suspected that humans were very, very good at hunting things. The aliens laughed at the warning. Now humans hunt them without mercy. Professor Velhan of the Cathara Science Institute stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her pale blue skin even paler than usual. In her hands, she held a data pad containing the most disturbing intelligence report she had ever compiled. Honored delegates, she began, her usually calm voice showing signs of strain. We have severely underestimated the human threat. In the past 3 months, they have demonstrated capabilities that should not be possible for such a young species. High Speaker Zektar leaned forward in his seat, his purple scales darkening with anger. Professor, you are speaking of a species that we easily defeated just months ago. They lost 3 colonies and accomplished nothing. That is precisely the problem, Velhan replied. They did accomplish something. They learned everything they needed to know about our military capabilities. And now they are using that knowledge against us with frightening efficiency. She activated the chamber's main display screen, showing a star map of the local galactic region. Red markers indicated recent battles and military incidents. In the past 90 days, human forces have attacked 47 alien military targets across 17 different star systems. They have captured or destroyed over 200 vessels from 6 different species. Most disturbing of all, they have done this while losing only 8 ships of their own. General Morthak of the Vorthak Empire stood up, his massive form casting shadows across nearby delegates. Impossible, he growled. Our intelligence reports show that humans have fewer than 100 military vessels total. How could they launch so many attacks? Velhan brought up tactical recordings from several recent battles. Because they are not fighting the way we expected them to fight. Watch this engagement from the Tau Ceti system. The recording showed a Vorthak supply convoy being attacked by what appeared to be empty space. Suddenly, human ships materialized from nowhere, destroyed half the convoy in minutes, then vanished again before the escorts could respond. Their stealth technology is beyond anything we have encountered, Velhan explained. Our sensors can barely detect them, and by the time we do, they have already struck and withdrawn. Another delegate, a crystalline being from the Nexari Republic, spoke up. But stealth alone cannot explain their success rate. Our forces have faced stealth attackers before. You are correct, Velhan agreed. Their tactics are equally revolutionary. They do not engage in honorable combat as civilized species do. Instead, they study their targets extensively, identify weaknesses, and exploit them with surgical precision. She brought up another recording, this one showing a human infiltration of a Zephyrian command station. The security footage was fragmentary, but it clearly showed human soldiers moving through the station's corridors with impossible stealth. This is the Kepler 442 Command Center, Velhan continued. It was considered one of the most secure facilities in Zephyrian space. Last week, human special forces penetrated the station, accessed the main computer systems, and downloaded over 6,000 classified files. They accomplished this without killing a single guard or triggering a single alarm. The chamber erupted in shocked voices and worried chittering. A successful infiltration of a major military facility was unprecedented in modern galactic warfare. How do we know it was humans? Asked a delegate from the Spiral Confederation. Velhan's expression grew even more grim. Because they left a message in the station commander's private quarters. It was written in perfect Zephyrian and signed by someone called Captain Elena Vasquez. The message said, "We were here. We could have killed you all. This is your only warning." High Speaker Zektar felt his confidence beginning to crack. What do they want? Are they demanding tribute? Territory? Submission from their enemies? That is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this situation, Velhan replied. They have made no demands. They are not trying to conquer territory or establish colonies. They appear to be conducting what their military doctrine calls target elimination campaigns. She brought up a new display showing patterns of human attacks over the past 3 months. Their strikes are becoming more coordinated and sophisticated. They are systematically targeting command structures, supply lines, and communication networks, but they are also doing something else. The display highlighted several incidents where human forces had attacked alien facilities, but then withdrawn without occupying them. In each case, they gather intelligence, eliminate military targets, and then disappear. They are not trying to hold territory. They are degrading our military capabilities while strengthening their own. General Morthak slammed his massive fist on his chair's armrest. Then we crush them. We gather our fleets and attack their homeworld directly. Professor Velhan shook her head. General, I must advise against that course of action. Our intelligence suggests that humans are significantly more dangerous than we initially believed. They appear to have been deliberately concealing their true military capabilities during their first contact with the Council. She brought up technical analyses of captured human equipment. Their technology is not primitive as we assumed. It is simply different. While we focused on energy shields and beam weapons, they perfected kinetic warfare and stealth systems specifically designed to counter our defensive capabilities. A new voice spoke from the chamber's communication system. It was Admiral Thexelan of the Zephyrian Home Fleet, reporting from the Empire's capital system. Professor Velhan's analysis is correct, the Admiral said grimly. Yesterday, human ships appeared in our home system itself. They did not attack our worlds or stations. Instead, they transmitted a message on all frequencies, then disappeared before our fleet could intercept them. What message? Sektar demanded. It was addressed to you personally, High Speaker. The human Admiral Rivera said, "You wanted to teach us about galactic warfare. We have been excellent students. Now it is time for your final examination. We hope you have studied as hard as we have." The chamber fell silent as the implications of Admiral Thexlan's report sank in. Human ships had penetrated the most heavily defended system in Zephyrian space, just to deliver a message. Velhan cleared her throat and continued her briefing. There is more. Our psychological analysis suggests that humans do not view this conflict as a war in the traditional sense. They appear to see it as a learning exercise that has now progressed to practical application. She displayed intercepted human communications that had been decoded by Cathera intelligence systems. These communications indicate that humans have been studying our military history, tactics, and psychology for months. They refer to different species by what they call threat assessment classifications. We are apparently designated as teaching examples. Teaching examples? General Morthak repeated. What does that mean? It means, Velhan said quietly, that they are using us to demonstrate to the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Every ship they destroy, every facility they infiltrate, every convoy they capture serves as a lesson to other species who might consider humans an easy target. High Speaker Zektar realized with growing horror that humanity had turned the tables completely. The aliens had thought they were teaching the humans a lesson about galactic power. Instead, the humans had used that lesson as a starting point for something much more sophisticated. Professor, he asked carefully, in your scientific opinion, what are human intentions regarding the Zephyrian Empire? Velhan consulted her datapad before answering. Based on their current tactical pattern and strategic objectives, I believe they intend to systematically eliminate Zephyrian military capabilities until your empire can no longer pose a threat to human interests. And then they will probably move on to the next species that threatened them. She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien delegates. I recommend that this council consider a formal apology to humanity and immediate recognition of their territorial sovereignty. General Morthak roared in anger. Apology? We should be crushing these insects. Professor Velhan looked at him with something approaching pity. General, in 3 months, humans have crippled the military forces of 6 different species using fewer than 100 ships. They have demonstrated the ability to strike targets anywhere in known space without warning. They have shown that they can gather intelligence from our most secure facilities. She paused, letting her words sink in. What exactly do you think your forces could accomplish against them that the Zephyrian Empire has not already tried? As the council session descended into worried debates and frightened arguments, Professor Velhan quietly made her own decision. The Cathera Science Institute would be withdrawing from any further conflicts with humanity. Some lessons, she realized, were too dangerous to learn the hard way. The aliens laughed at the warning. Now humans hunt them without mercy. The message arrived on all Zephyrian communication networks simultaneously at 600 hours, standard galactic time. It was transmitted from the captured Zephyrian relay station at Wolf 359, which had fallen to human forces 3 days earlier. High Speaker Zektar read it in his private chambers as alarms wailed throughout the Imperial Palace. To High Speaker Zektar and the Zephyrian Military Command, the message began. This is Admiral Marcus Rivera of the Earth Defense Force. 6 hours ago, your forces attacked and destroyed 3 human civilian colonies, killing 2.3 million non-combatants. You have crossed our final line. Zektar felt his blood turn cold as he continued reading. We gave you a warning when we first met. We told you not to mistake our kindness for weakness. You laughed. We have spent the past year showing you the difference between human kindness and human capability. You have ignored every lesson. Now you will learn what happens when humans are no longer kind. The message ended with a simple statement. Protocol Omega is now in effect. The Zephyrian Empire has 24 hours to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why peaceful species should never be pushed too far. Zektar's hand shook as he set down the communication device. The attack on human civilian colonies had been an act of desperation. With the Zephyrian military being systematically destroyed by human hit-and-run attacks, the Empire's military leaders had decided to force humanity into negotiations by targeting their non-combatant populations. 2. Had been the worst mistake in Zephyrian history. Admiral Rivera stood in the command center beneath Colorado, surrounded by displays showing the positions of human fleets throughout known space. For the past year, humanity had been playing a careful game of limited warfare, targeting only military assets and avoiding unnecessary casualties. That game was now over. Admiral, reported Commander Park, all fleet commanders have confirmed receipt of Protocol Omega. Operation Final Lesson is ready to commence. Rivera looked around the command center at the faces of his officers. Every person in the room had lost friends or family in the alien attack on the civilian colonies. Their expressions were calm, professional, and absolutely merciless. Commence the operation, Rivera ordered quietly. Across the galaxy, human fleets that had been hiding in deep space for months suddenly emerged and began moving toward their targets. But these were not the small stealth ships that had been conducting harassment attacks for the past year. These were the ships that humanity had been building in secret while the aliens focused on hunting ghosts. The first target was the Zephyrian military shipyard at Kepler 186. The facility was protected by a fleet of 40 warships and the most advanced defense systems in the Empire. The Zephyrians believed it was impossible to attack. They were wrong. Admiral Chen's task force emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system, and the defending Zephyrians immediately began laughing at what they saw. The human fleet consisted of only 6 ships, each barely larger than a Zephyrian escort fighter. The laughter stopped when the human ships opened fire. The weapons that emerged from the small human vessels were unlike anything seen in galactic warfare. Streams of antimatter contained in magnetic fields struck the Zephyrian ships at near light speed, completely annihilating anything they touched. The aliens' energy shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, were useless against matter and antimatter converting directly into pure energy. In 14 minutes, the entire Zephyrian defense fleet was destroyed. The shipyard itself lasted another 6 minutes, before being reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Similar scenes played out across 17 different star systems as human fleets demonstrated technologies that made their previous capabilities look primitive. The aliens finally understood that everything they had seen from humanity over the past year had been carefully restrained warfare. Now they were seeing what humans could really do. On the Zephyrian homeworld, panic spread through the population as reports came in from across the Empire. Not since the ancient wars of unification had so many Zephyrian military assets been destroyed so quickly. High Speaker Zektar stood in the Empire's war room, watching as red markers on the strategic display indicated the destruction of military bases, shipyards, and fleet concentrations throughout Zephyrian space. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded of his intelligence chief. "We don't know, High Speaker," the officer replied. "Our estimates said they had fewer than 200 vessels total. But they are currently conducting simultaneous attacks in 23 different systems." General Yexnal, who had replaced several commanders killed in human attacks, spoke up grimly. "High Speaker, we have lost 60% of our military infrastructure in the past 18 hours. At this rate, the Empire will have no defensive capability within a week." Zektar stared at the display, watching centuries of Zephyrian military power being erased in real time. "Can we negotiate? Offer them tribute territory, anything they want?" "We have tried, sir," the communications officer reported. "They are not responding to any diplomatic channels. The only message we have received is a repeat of Admiral Rivera's ultimatum." The worst part was the surgical precision of the human attacks. They were not targeting civilian populations or non-military infrastructure. Every strike was against a legitimate military target, conducted with devastating efficiency and minimal collateral damage. The humans were demonstrating that they could destroy the Zephyrian Empire's ability to wage war while leaving its civilian population completely unharmed. It was a level of military control that no galactic species had ever achieved. Admiral Rivera received the final reports from his fleet commanders at 2200 hours. In 16 hours of coordinated attacks, human forces had eliminated 78% of Zephyrian military assets while losing only 3 ships. "Sir," Commander Park reported, "we're receiving a priority communication from the Galactic Council. They're requesting an immediate ceasefire and emergency negotiations." Rivera considered the request for a moment. "Tell the Council that humanity will accept surrender from the Zephyrian Empire. Unconditional and immediate. If they agree, the attacks will stop. If they refuse, we will continue until there is nothing left of their military capability." The message was transmitted to the Galactic Council, where an emergency session had been called as news of the human offensive spread throughout known space. Professor Velhan of the Cathara Science Institute stood before the assembled delegates, no longer the calm academic she had been a year ago. The data she had gathered about human capabilities had left her deeply shaken. "Honored delegates," she began, "we are witnessing the emergence of a military power unlike anything in recorded galactic history. In less than one day, humans have effectively eliminated one of the galaxy's major military forces using technologies and tactics that we are only beginning to understand." High Speaker Zektar, appearing via emergency communication from his bunker on the Zephyrian homeworld, looked like a broken leader. "The Zephyrian Empire formally surrenders to humanity," he announced. "We accept full responsibility for initiating this conflict and agree to any terms they may demand." Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped forward to address the council. She looked exactly the same as she had a year ago when the aliens had laughed at her warning, but the atmosphere in the chamber was completely different now. "The Earth Defense Force accepts the Zephyrian surrender," she said calmly. "Our terms are simple. The Zephyrian Empire will dismantle its remaining military forces and agree to never again threaten human colonies or shipping. In return, we will not target their civilian population or infrastructure." She looked around the chamber at the hundreds of alien delegates, all of whom were staring at her with expressions ranging from fear to amazement. "We also request that this council formally recognize humanity's territorial sovereignty and our right to defend ourselves against aggression. We hope that future diplomatic relations can be more productive than our first meeting." General Morthak of the Vorthak Empire stood up slowly. "Ambassador Chen," he said carefully, "the Vorthak Empire would like to formally apologize for any misunderstandings during your previous visit to this council. We hope that our species can work together for mutual benefit and galactic peace." Similar statements came from delegates throughout the chamber. The species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers were now competing to offer friendship and cooperation. Ambassador Chen nodded politely to each offer. "Humanity appreciates these gestures of friendship. We look forward to peaceful relations with all species represented here today. As the council session concluded with formal recognition of human territorial sovereignty and defensive rights, Professor Velhan remained in her seat, studying her data about human military capabilities. The most disturbing conclusion in her analysis was not about what humans had done, but about what they had chosen not to do. The technologies they had demonstrated could have been used to destroy entire planets or wipe out civilian populations. Instead, they had been applied with surgical precision against military targets only. Humans, she realized, were not just superior warriors. They were superior warriors with absolute control over their destructive capabilities,